Hi, I'm Todd Schiller, co-founder of PixieBrix, and today I'm going to be talking through some of the hard-won lessons that we've learned using AI to code an AI-enabled extension that's used globally by enterprises. Our mission has always been to really empower people to create the perfect experience for the technology that matters most to them. Therefore, our first product was a browser extension because browser extensions enable permissionless innovation. You can automate and modernize sites that you don't yourself control, whether those are third-party websites, vendor websites, government websites. You can also automate and integrate across tabs. And we fundamentally believe that browser extensions are a key part of how do you empower the people closest to the work to really customize their tools to the job. Browser extensibility is in fact a spectrum. There's multiple different ways to customize the standard browser experience. In the past year, we've even seen many different forks of the Chromium browser for things like security or embedding AI capabilities directly into the browser. Then you have the standard kind of custom extension experience that most people are familiar with. You go to the Chrome Web Store, you get an extension, it does something. And then you have a category of extensions that, in fact, enable people to customize in different ways. And so one that some people might be familiar with is user scripts like GreaseMonkey or TamperMonkey that allow you to run JavaScript in the context of a web page. And then PixieBrix is a different kind that you can think of it like user scripts, but more low code or no code to enable a broader audience to be able to customize. Each of these comes with different trade-offs. Again, the things on the right side of the screen are generally more lightweight, more agile, but then those comes with trade-offs of less control, less affordances, and more kind of restrictions in terms of what these can do versus, for example, creating a custom extension or building your entire browser yourself. As we've started applying kind of AI coding tools like Claude, like Cursor, to the problem of browser extensions, we found there was three main gaps or mismatches in terms of how those tools treat software development lifecycle. The first is that browser extensions are actually distributed systems, even though at first glance they might look like applications. The second is because of the web store structure and how they're distributed, they actually have slower iteration loops than many of these tools that are more focused on web applications. And third and finally, in many cases, you want extensions to be able to work in the context of host sites. Those host sites has changes or might be outwardly hostile to your extension. And so these things are surmountable. You just have to think through how to best handle them and how to best apply AI coding tools. But for people who aren't familiar how browser extensions work under the hood, I like to describe them as a distributed system in a box. You can think of a browser, it has multiple different tabs. Each tab has multiple different frames. And so your browser extension is injecting context onto each of those. But then you also have surface areas like the side panel on pages, as well as then things that are working behind the scenes. So storage, the service worker, off-screen document, a lot of different pieces that are talking to each other. And so you run into the usual suspects of distributed systems problems. Everything is async. You're doing message passing with serialized payloads. And so again, you run into those common problems with distributed systems, but in some ways it's worse than a normal distributed system. Some of these components have very complex lifecycle. You have things like tab pre-rendering, backward forward cache or worker recycling. And so it's just a different animal in terms of even normal distributed systems. And so on this, we'll talk through kind of the four best practices that we believe. The first one is really how do you choose the right base foundation, right? So I don't believe that most people should have to worry about the things that I showed on the last slide. And so you want to choose a foundation where you can be the most productive. And so in our case, we started at the library layer. We use a lot of different libraries in order to smooth over quirks in the browser extension APIs to have better ergonomics. But if you are building an extension for a single use case, and that use case is pretty common, you might consider using a framework instead, like WXT or Plasmo, in order to build it quickly. And if you don't want to worry about CI, CD, or preview builds, you might use a platform that helps you with those builds automatically, or even does things like submit to the Chrome Web Store on your behalf. That's the side, again, if you're building extensions. And then if you're building on top of extensions, right, the name of the game is really, do you want to be in the user script world, deal with the user script APIs, or do you want to build on top of a low-code platform like PixieBrix? That again, that's going to give you even higher abstractions in terms of integrations, compliance, components. Once you've chosen your foundation, the name of the game is how do you maximize the boring part of the application? Browser extensions can be built with standard frameworks like React, Angular, Vue. And so what you want to do is create a big area of those boring applications and then encapsulate the extension-specific code. That would be the extension code that uses the APIs, the messaging frameworks, messaging bus, etc. And so use the standard isolation tactics here, use dependency injection. When using AI, it's always better to be explicit than implicit. That's going to help the AI have better context locally in terms of how a particular piece of code is working. And then I always recommend enforcing these boundaries using linters or other tools to give that instantaneous feedback. And that kind of leads us to our next point, which is really creating fast feedback loops in a browser extension world. And so on this slide, each one of these icons is sort of time units. And so on the left-hand side, we have the quickest feedback loops. These would be things like use TypeScript. There are definitions for the different browsers. You probably want to even add more type information on. We use type tags or tag types for strings to help differentiate different values. We also use lint rules a ton and use AI to create custom lint rules. So whenever a bug comes in, we ask ourselves, was this a preventable bug? Or could we have caught it earlier on? And we write a lint rule for it. Moving through the testing kind of hierarchy, next up would be your headless test. Again, take advantage of dependency injection, use mocks, use fakes in the right places in order to be able to do integration tests in a realistic way. Then there's the how do you test the boring components of your app, right? Use Storybook, use the standard vanilla Playwright MCP. And then you can also use these tools for end-to-end tests for extensions. They're just going to take longer, especially if you're doing multiple different browser types or multiple different browser versions. We also test against Canary, for example. And so there even are some things that Playwright can't test. And so we use other tools that are more browser use capabilities like Rainforest QA in order to test those. And then obviously the other thing you want to do is always shift left, right? You always want to be in a world where you're catching things earlier versus relying on the slower feedback loops. And then speaking of feedback loops, again, extensions, often the value prop is modifying a host page. It's not a good idea to run your automated tests or do your QA against those host pages all the time because that's very slow and it's going to be flaky. And in some cases, they'll kind of catch your robotic behavior there. So what we do is we create test pages for the different patterns we come across. And so this screenshot is an example of one that we use for host style conflicts. Unfortunately, with extensions, even if you're using Shadow DOM, some styles can leak through. So we have a page with very extreme styles on it so we can see which styles are coming through to our extension. And then you have other things like rich text editors, single page applications. So the name of the game again is whenever you have a bug, just go ahead and create a test page for that bug so that then it's in your repertoire of regression tests and definitely use AI to generate those test pages. And so to recap, what you want to do is you want to set your AI coding tool up for success. Choose the right foundation, maximize the boring path, create fast feedback loops, and again, create those test pages for those host page quirks. That's going to give you that stability in testing and in your agentic loop. And then the other thing I'd be remiss to point out is that enterprise grade is more than just code. You can generate all the code in the world, but if you don't have the right enterprise IT documentation, the right trust center, the right audits in place, you're not going to get that much traction in enterprise, especially with browser extensions. And so go do those things and definitely leverage AI for those non-code activities. And so as you're thinking about which point or which foundation you want to build on, I would definitely advise you to take a look at PixieBrix. We are the only enterprise grade platform enabling end user AI coding. So start for free and definitely attend our workshop to get hands-on experience building with the PixieBrix platform.